Bull prevents risky surgery on boy, saving his life. Michael Anderson couldn't hold back his tears as he watched his 9-year-old son, Ethan, lying in that hospital bed surrounded by tubes and machines. The small town in Pennsylvania had never witnessed such a baffling case, one that left even the most experienced doctors at Mercy General Hospital completely stunned. It was during this desperate moment that Brave, the massive bull, a gift from Ethan's late grandmother, acted in an inexplicable way. The animal, who had always shown an almost supernatural bond with the boy, broke through the farm fence and traveled over 3 miles to the hospital, causing a commotion that delayed the experimental surgery proposed by the ambitious Dr. Robert Wilson. No one could have guessed that this providential delay would mark the beginning of a twist that would forever change the Anderson family's life. "There's no way Brave got here on his own, Michael," murmured Grandma Ruth, Ethan's maternal grandmother, as she tried to make sense of the impossible. "That bull has always been special, but this doesn't make any sense." Michael stared at his late wife's mother, his eyes red from crying. "All I know is that this surgery was already weighing heavy on my heart, Mom. The doctor barely explained what's wrong with the boy. Mercy General Hospital, the only one, in the small town of Pleasant Hill, rarely handled complex cases. Most procedures were referred to Philadelphia, the state capital. But Dr. Robert insisted he could treat the boy right there, calling it a unique opportunity. Words that now sounded different to Michael's ears. "Your son has a rare condition, Mr. Anderson," the doctor had said 2 days earlier, adjusting his expensive glasses. "An immediate intervention is needed to save his life." Grandma Ruth had never fully trusted the young surgeon. At 68, she carried that sharp intuition grandmothers seem to develop with age. Ever since her daughter passed, leaving Michael alone to raise Ethan, she had moved to the family's small farm to help. And it was she who taught her grandson to love animals, especially Brave, the bull who had been by the boy's side since his first steps. "Where's the animal now?" Michael asked, looking out the hospital window. "They managed to secure him in the back parking lot," Grandma Ruth replied. "The whole town's talking about it. People are even bringing food for him." The chaos caused by the bull's arrival was just the beginning. During efforts to contain him, water pipes burst, flooding the very wing where the surgery was supposed to take place. Dr. Robert couldn't hide his frustration over the forced delay. Nurse Barbara, a middle-aged woman who had worked at the hospital for over 20 years, used the commotion to approach Michael with a worried expression. "Mr. Anderson, I don't like to meddle where I'm not invited, but something's off about your son's case," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching. "The symptoms don't match the diagnosis. And Dr. Robert's urgency, well, it's not normal." A chill ran down Michael's spine. The nurse's words confirmed the uneasy feeling he'd had since Ethan was admitted. The rain outside seemed to mirror the storm of emotions raging inside him. The family's small farm had been struggling financially since his wife's passing 3 years ago. Hospital bills were piling up, and he had considered selling Brave to cover the costs. Now, looking at the massive bull who had somehow found his way to the hospital, he felt grateful he hadn't gone through with it. Grandma Ruth walked back into the room, holding a cup of coffee with a determined look on her face. "I just called your cousin Jennifer in Philadelphia. She knows a very good doctor who's coming here tomorrow. Dr. Sarah Miller, a pediatric specialist. But Dr. Robert said we can't wait, that Ethan needs surgery immediately," Michael Anderson replied, feeling torn. Grandma Ruth firmly grasped her son-in-law's hand. "Michael, trust me, something isn't right here, and it wasn't a coincidence that Brave showed up today and caused all this commotion. Let's wait for Dr. Sarah." That night, as Ethan slept under sedation, Grandma Ruth quietly placed a photo of the boy with Brave next to the bed. In his sleep, the child seemed more relaxed, as if he knew his friend was nearby. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The next morning, Mercy General Hospital was still dealing with the damage from the bull incident. Dr. Robert Wilson was trying to reorganize the surgery, but now faced a new obstacle, the arrival of Dr. Sarah Miller. The doctor, a woman with a calm expression and keen eyes, wasted no time requesting access to Ethan's test results. Her expression changed immediately as she reviewed the documents. "This diagnosis doesn't make sense," she murmured to herself, adjusting her glasses while comparing the different images and lab results. The symptoms point to a completely different condition. When Dr. Sarah questioned the need for the proposed surgery, Dr. Robert reacted defensively. "With all due respect, doctor, I've been handling this case from the start. This child has a serious condition requiring immediate surgical intervention. The tests suggest a severe allergic reaction, not something that calls for surgery," Sarah countered, maintaining the professional composure she was known for. "We need to run more tests before subjecting this boy to an invasive procedure." Outside the hospital, Brave had become a local attraction. The massive bull, now calmer, accepted food from curious onlookers who had gathered to see the animal that stormed the hospital to save his young owner. The story had already spread through town, taking on near-legendary proportions. Back at Hope Farm, Michael ran into Old Bill, a respected cattle rancher in the area who had come to check on the boy and the bull himself. "That animal has a special bond with your son, Michael," the old man said with the wisdom of someone who'd spent his whole life around animals. "In 50 years of working with cattle, I've never seen anything like it." He sensed the boy was in danger. Michael shook his head, still trying to process everything. "Old Bill, do you know Dr. Robert well? He's not from around here. He came to town about 2 years ago." The old rancher adjusted his straw hat and stared at Michael before answering. "I know enough to tell you he's tried to make a name for himself with rare cases before. My nephew works at the State University Hospital in Philadelphia. Seems the doctor left there after some complications." The revelation hit Michael like a bombshell. Returning to the hospital, he found Grandma Ruth talking animatedly with Dr. Sarah. "Michael, the doctor thinks Ethan might be having a severe allergic reaction to medication," his mother-in-law explained, relief clear in her voice. "It's not something that needs surgery." Dr. Sarah nodded in confirmation. "We need a few more tests to be sure, but the symptoms match a condition called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, a severe drug reaction. It's serious, but treatable with the right approach." Just then, the door to the room opened and Dr. Michael walked in, visibly annoyed to find Dr. Sarah there. "I see you're discussing the case without the attending physician present," he said, trying to keep his composure. "The repairs in the surgical wing are already complete. We can proceed with the operation today." "Dr. Robert," Dr. Sarah kept her tone professional, "I'd like to suggest some additional tests before moving forward with any surgical procedure. There are indicators here pointing to a different condition." "There's no time for that," he countered firmly. "Every hour that passes increases the risk to the patient." Ethan, who had been silently observing the medical discussion, found the courage to speak up. "I authorize the additional tests, doctor. I don't want my son going through surgery if it's not absolutely necessary." The look Dr. Robert gave Michael held barely concealed irritation. With no further arguments against the father's decision, he left the room muttering about responsibilities and consequences. As new tests were conducted, Tommy began showing signs of improvement after one of his medications was stopped. His fever dropped significantly, and the boy even managed to stay awake for short periods, persistently asking about Brave. "Dad, is it true that Brave came to the hospital?" the boy asked, his voice still weak but his eyes shining with curiosity. Michael smiled, stroking his son's hair. "Yes, it's true, son. That stubborn bull broke through the fence and ended up here. Seems like he was looking for you." "I knew it," Tommy exclaimed with more energy than he'd shown in days. "I dreamed about him last night. In the dream, he was telling me not to let them cut my stomach." Michael and Grandma Ruth exchanged meaningful glances, chilled by the boy's words. In the hallway, Nurse Barbara stopped Dr. Sarah to share a troubling discovery. "Doctor, I found this in the prescription room trash," she said, holding up a partially torn piece of paper. "It's the results of a test Dr. Robert ordered yesterday, but they weren't included in the patient's file." The document clearly showed an abnormal reaction to one of the medications Tommy had been given, confirming Dr. Sarah's suspicions. The doctor shook her head, worried not just about the boy's condition, but also the ethical implications of the discovery. "We need to take this to the hospital director," she concluded. Outside, Brave remained surprisingly calm for a bull of his size, as if he had a mission to stay near his little friend. Townspeople continued visiting the animal, sharing increasingly elaborate stories about the special bond between the boy and the bull. Granny Willow, a respected healer in the community, remarked to the other women watching the bull, "That animal has a wisdom many city folks don't understand. The elders used to say some animals see things we can't." News of the unusual case began spreading beyond Pleasant Hill. A reporter from the regional paper showed up to cover the story of the guardian bull, interviewing townspeople and hospital staff. Meanwhile, in the hospital director's office, a tense meeting was taking place. Dr. William Bennett, the administrative director, listened carefully to Dr. Sarah's explanation and examined the documents Nurse Barbara had presented. "This is very serious, Doctor," he said, removing his glasses and rubbing his temples. "If what you're saying is proven, we're dealing with a major ethical violation." "The new tests confirm it, Director," Sarah replied. "The boy is having a severe allergic reaction to one of the medications. The proposed surgery was not only unnecessary, but potentially fatal given the patient's current condition." Dr. Robert, called into the meeting, entered the room with an air of superiority that quickly turned to apprehension when he saw the documents on the table. "I can explain," he began, nervously adjusting his tie. "These tests aren't conclusive. My clinical experience clearly indicated the need for surgery." "Your clinical experience or your medical journal article?" Nurse Barbara asked, unable to contain her outrage. "We all know you're trying to publish a rare case study to boost your career." The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. William requested that Dr. Robert be temporarily suspended from his duties pending an internal investigation. The young patient's health was the absolute priority at that moment. In the hospital room, Ethan continued to improve by the hour under the new treatment prescribed by Dr. Sarah. His eyes, once dull from illness, regained their childhood sparkle. "Dad, I want to see Brave," he asked, sitting up in bed with some difficulty. "He must be scared here at the hospital." Michael exchanged glances with Grandma Ruth, considering the seemingly impossible request. It was Dr. Sarah who surprised everyone. "Actually, I think we can arrange that. A brief meeting in the outdoor courtyard could have a positive therapeutic effect. I've seen studies on the emotional benefits of animal interaction during recovery." Special arrangements were made for the unusual reunion. With special permission from the hospital director, Ethan was wheeled to a secluded area of the courtyard where Brave waited, now calmer and surrounded by volunteers caring for the animal. The moment the boy and the bull reunited brought tears to everyone's eyes. The massive animal approached with surprising gentleness, lowering his head so Ethan could touch him. The boy hugged the bull's neck, whispering words of gratitude. Only the two of them seemed to fully understand. "He knew, Dad," Ethan said, turning to Michael with watery eyes. "Brave knew something was wrong?" Dr. William, observing the scene from a distance, remarked to Dr. Sarah, "In 40 years of medicine, I've never seen anything like this. How could an animal know?" The doctor smiled, watching the touching moment. "Science still has much to learn about the connections between living beings, Doctor. Sometimes emotional bonds go beyond our rational understanding." The story of the boy saved by his bull captured the heart of the community. As Ethan made a full recovery under Dr. Sarah's care, a wave of solidarity swept through Pleasant Hill. Neighbors organized work crews to help out at the Anderson farm, ensuring the animals were fed and crops tended while Michael was away. Jessica Thompson, a teacher at the local school and a longtime friend of Michael's late wife, coordinated a fundraiser to help with medical expenses. She visited Ethan daily, bringing letters and drawings from his classmates. "The kids can't wait for you to come back, Ethan," she said, handing him a colorful folder full of messages. "And they won't stop talking about Brave. You've become a celebrity." Ethan smiled, flipping through drawings that depicted his bull as a kind of hero. "When I go back, I'll bring Brave to meet everyone." "I think that'll have to happen." "Outside the school," Jessica laughed. "I doubt Principal Margaret would approve of a bull on the playground." In the hallway, Michael spoke with Dr. Sarah about his son's discharge, scheduled for the coming days. "I want to thank you for everything, Doctor," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "If it weren't for you..." If it weren't for that extraordinary bull, you mean, she corrected with a gentle smile. He's the one who caused the surgery, delay, and gave us time to discover the real diagnosis. And what about Dr. Robert? Asked Michael hesitantly. The doctor's expression grew serious. The ethics committee is investigating. Apparently, this wasn't the first case where he recommended unnecessary procedures for research and publication purposes. It's a serious breach of medical ethics. That afternoon, the hospital director called a press conference to explain what had happened, announcing new safety measures and diagnostic verification protocols. The story had reached proportions no one could have predicted, drawing attention to important issues about medical ethics and patients' rights to second opinions. Dr. William took the opportunity to announce significant changes. This incident has made us reevaluate our protocols. From now on, all complex surgical procedures will be reviewed by a medical board before final approval. Additionally, we're implementing an integrative medicine program, recognizing the importance of emotional well-being in the healing process. The last part of the announcement was met with special enthusiasm from the community. The hospital was launching a pioneering animal therapy project inspired by Ethan and Brave's extraordinary story. Dr. Sarah Miller has accepted our invitation to lead this new department, concluded the director, to warm applause. At the Anderson farm, preparations were underway to welcome Ethan home. Michael, with the help of neighbors and friends, had renovated his son's room and built a new shelter for Brave near the house, a decision many found unusual, but one that made perfect sense to the family. Grandma Ruth, observing the changes on the property, said to her son-in-law, "You know, Michael, I think Emily is watching over us from above," she said, referring to her late daughter. "She always said that Bull had something special." Michael nodded, feeling the weight of his wife's memories, but also a renewed sense of hope. "You're right, Grandma Ruth, and I think we've found a new purpose for our farm." The idea had come naturally, turning part of the property into a therapeutic space where children in recovery could interact with animals. With Dr. Sarah's support and the local school's involvement, the project began taking shape, promising not just to revitalize the Anderson family's life, but also to bring a new perspective to the entire community. The night before his hospital discharge, Ethan received an unexpected visit. George Hawkins, a respected elderly farmer in the area, brought a special gift. "Son, you and your bull did something important," he said, handing Ethan a small wooden sculpture of a boy and a bull. It reminded us that sometimes we need to listen to our hearts, not just what science tells us. It was a lesson that resonated deeply with the residents of that small town, who were used to living in harmony with nature and animals, but had slowly drifted away from those roots over the years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The day of Ethan's hospital discharge finally arrived. Still, a bit weak but completely free of severe symptoms, he could hardly contain his excitement about going home. Dressed in clean new clothes, a gift from Jessica and other school teachers, he waited for his final checkup with Dr. Sarah. "So, young man, how are you feeling today?" the doctor asked, entering the room with a warm smile. "I feel great, doctor. I can hardly wait to go home and be with Brave," the boy replied, swinging his legs that dangled from the bed. "Well, your test results are excellent," she confirmed, glancing at the clipboard. "But remember the recommendations: moderate rest, balanced meals, and most importantly, none of the medication that caused the allergic reaction." Michael Anderson, who was packing his son's few belongings, interrupted. "I've already thrown out all the old medicines we had at home, doctor, and we made a list of all the medications he can't take." Grandma Ruth, sitting in the armchair by the bed, added firmly, "And I've already told everyone in town that no one should offer my grandson any pills, not even an aspirin." The doctor laughed at the family's dedication. "I see Ethan is in good hands. And don't worry, you have my personal number. If you have any questions, just call. I'll be visiting Pleasant Hill weekly from now on to develop the new animal therapy program." Outside the hospital, a small crowd waited. The story had touched so many hearts that it seemed the whole town wanted to be part of the moment. Old Bill had organized a motorcade to accompany the family back to the farm. When Ethan appeared at the main door, supported by his father, spontaneous, applause broke out. The boy, shy from all the attention, hid his face in Michael's shoulder but soon smiled when he saw the banner his classmates had stretched out. "Welcome back, Ethan and Brave, our heroes." "Where's Brave?" Ethan asked, looking around for the bull. "He's already home waiting for you, son," Michael replied, guiding him to the car decorated with balloons and colorful ribbons. The drive to the farm was a true celebration. Cars honked, people waved from the sidewalks, and even the stern father, Matthew, was there, sprinkling holy water as the procession passed by the church. When they arrived at the farm, an even bigger surprise awaited them. During Ethan's hospitalization, the neighbors hadn't just taken care of the animals and crops. They'd also come together to make small repairs the property desperately needed. The barn roof had been fixed, the house porch painted, and a new irrigation system installed in the garden. Michael, moved by the kindness, could barely express his gratitude. I don't even know what to say," he stammered, looking at the smiling faces around them. "You don't have to say anything, friend," Old Bill replied, patting his shoulder. "That's just how we do things around here. We help each other when needed." Ethan, however, had only one thing on his mind. As soon as the car stopped, he opened the door and, though still a little unsteady on his feet, headed straight for the new shelter built for Brave near the main house. The reunion between the boy and the bull in their familiar surroundings was even more emotional than the one at the hospital. The massive animal, which would normally inspire fear in anyone because of its imposing size, behaved like a gentle pet around Ethan. It lowered its head to receive the boy's affectionate strokes, and Ethan hugged its neck with all the strength his recovering body could muster. "You saved my life, Brave," Ethan whispered into the animal's ear. "You're the best friend anyone could ever have." Grandma Ruth, watching the scene, couldn't hold back her tears. She thought of her daughter, who had passed away when Ethan was just 6. It was she who had insisted on giving the little calf to her son, despite Michael's initial hesitation, thinking the animal was too big for a child. Emily always knew, the elderly woman thought to herself. She always said this bull would be more than just a farm animal. In the weeks that followed, life gradually returned to normal for the Anderson family, or rather to a new normal, transformed by the extraordinary experience they had lived through. The case of Ethan and Brave had drawn attention not only in the region, but also in the state capital. Journalists occasionally showed up to write stories about the miracle bull, as some called it. Dr. Robert Wilson was permanently removed from Mercy General Hospital after the ethics investigation concluded. It was discovered he had falsified results in other cases before, always seeking rare procedures that could earn him prestigious scientific publications. The scandal served as a warning to other hospitals in the region about the importance of strict verification protocols. Meanwhile, the animal therapy project, led by Dr. Sarah Miller, began taking shape. A small part of the Andersons' farm was adapted to host recovering children, who came to spend a few hours interacting with the animals. Brave, naturally, became the main attraction. "It's amazing to see how the children respond," the doctor remarked during one session, watching a little girl with partial paralysis smile as she touched the massive bull. Well-being and recovery indicators improved significantly after these interactions. Michael, who had initially been unsure about turning part of his property into a therapy center, was now fully involved in the project. "My Emily always said this land had a greater purpose," he said, helping a child climb onto a small stool to reach the bull better. "We just never imagined what it would be." The local school also got involved. Jessica organized regular visits with her students, incorporating lessons about respecting animals and nature. Ethan, now fully recovered, became a sort of junior guide, proudly introducing Brave and the other farm animals to visitors. During one of these school visits, little Lily, just 7 years old, asked with all the innocence of childhood, "Ethan, how did Brave know you were in danger at the hospital? Does he have superpowers?" The boy thought for a moment before answering. "Not superpowers, Lily, it's love. When you really love someone, you feel things others don't understand." The answer, in its childlike simplicity, perfectly captured what many adults tried to explain in more complicated ways. The success of the animal therapy program led Mercy General Hospital to expand the initiative. Soon other gentle animals were included: calm horses for equine therapy, trained companion dogs, and even a few sheep and goats for gentler interactions with younger children. But none had the same impact as Brave, who seemed to have a natural ability to connect with those who needed comfort most. Grandma Ruth, watching her grandson flourish in his new role, remarked to Michael during an afternoon coffee on the porch, "You know, my son, sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as trouble. If Ethan hadn't gotten sick, we would have never discovered this land's true purpose," Michael finished, gazing at the property that had now taken on new life and meaning. Word of the work being done at the Andersons' farm even reached the state capital. Representatives from the health department visited to learn about the project, impressed by the results Dr. Sarah had documented. "We're considering implementing similar programs in other regions," the Deputy Secretary, Dr. Elizabeth Carter, said during her visit. "The preliminary data is extremely promising." For Ethan, however, all this attention was secondary. What mattered was being at home, healthy, surrounded by family and his inseparable friend Brave. The emotional scars left by the premature loss of his mother were beginning to heal through this new mission that seemed destined for them. On a particularly special afternoon, when a group of children from the hospital visited the farm, a sudden rain sent everyone running for shelter in the barn. As they waited for the storm to pass, Ethan began telling his story to the young visitors. "At first I was really scared," he explained, sitting on a hay bale with the children circled around him. "The doctors said things I didn't understand, and everything hurt so much. How did you know you didn't need the surgery?" one of the boys asked. Ethan smiled, glancing at Brave, who watched the group from the barn entrance. "I didn't know, but Brave did. He always knows when something isn't right. When Grandma told me he broke through the fence and went all the way to the hospital, I realized he was trying to tell me something important." The children gazed in awe at the massive bull, a mix of fear and fascination in their eyes. "But isn't he dangerous?" a little girl with a cast on her arm asked. "Brave?" Ethan laughed. "He looks scary, but he has the gentlest heart in the world. Come on, I'll show you." Carefully, the boy guided the children to where the bull waited patiently. One by one, he taught them how to offer a handful of hay in their open palms and how to stroke the animal's neck. The smiles that followed were living proof of the therapeutic power of that connection. Dr. Sarah, who observed the scene from a distance alongside Michael, jotted notes on her clipboard. "This is extraordinary," she remarked. "Look how even the shyest, most withdrawn children are engaging. Ethan has a natural gift for this." Michael nodded proudly. "He's always had a way with animals, ever since he was little. Emily used to say he had a special light they could see." The doctor smiled, closing her notebook. "You know, Michael, as a scientist, I've always sought rational explanations for everything. But cases like Ethan's and Brave's remind me there are still many things science can't fully explain." As the project grew, so did the reputation of the Anderson farm. What was once a property on the brink of financial ruin had transformed into a leading center for animal-assisted therapy. Donations began pouring in, allowing for infrastructure improvements and the inclusion of more animals in the program. Ethan, now 10 years old and fully recovered from his medical ordeal, flourished in his role as a young instructor. At school, his grades improved significantly, especially in natural sciences and biology. His experience sparked a genuine interest in how the human body worked and in veterinary medicine. "When I grow up, I want to be a doctor for people and animals," he declared during a family dinner. "Is that possible?" Grandma Ruth chuckled, scooping another serving of rice onto her grandson's plate. "In your case, my dear, I think anything's possible. You've already shown us that." The Anderson farm had become more than just a home and workplace. It was now a symbol of hope and renewal for the entire community. The success of the animal therapy program inspired other initiatives in the region, from community gardens to senior inclusion programs. One Sunday afternoon, about a year after Ethan's hospitalization, the family organized a small celebration at the farm. It wasn't just to mark the boy's full recovery, but also to thank the community for their support during the hard times. The simple gathering with homemade treats prepared by Grandma Ruth and neighbors brought together nearly everyone in Pleasant Hill. The backyard of the house, decorated with colorful banners and lights, welcomed doctors, nurses, teachers, children from the therapeutic program, and even the town's mayor, who wouldn't miss the chance to associate himself with the successful project. During the celebration, Dr. Sarah Miller asked for everyone's attention to make a special announcement. "I'd like to share some wonderful news," she said, holding an official envelope. "The animal therapy program at Hope Farm, as the Anderson property is now known, has been recognized by State University as a pilot project of excellence. We're receiving funding to expand activities and scientifically document the results." Enthusiastic applause followed the announcement. Michael Anderson, still unaccustomed to so much attention, blushed when called to say a few words. I'm not good with speeches," he began nervously. "I just want to thank all of you for not giving up on us. This farm was nearly bankrupt after my wife passed, and now," his voice cracked with emotion, "now it has a greater purpose than we ever imagined." Ethan, standing beside his father, added with the simplicity of childhood, "And it's all thanks to Brave. Isn't he the best bull in the world?" The warm laughter that followed was interrupted by a loud bellow, as if the animal itself had responded to the mention of its name. The bull, watching the festivities from his special pen, seemed to approve of the whole celebration. That night, after most guests had left and only close friends remained chatting on the porch, Ethan approached Dr. Sarah with a question that had been on his mind for a long time. "Doctor, you've studied so much. Can you explain how Brave knew I was in danger?" The doctor smiled, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "There are different kinds of knowledge, Ethan. Science explains many things, but there's still much we don't fully understand. The connection between living beings sometimes goes beyond what we can measure or prove." The boy nodded, seeming to accept the answer. "Grandma says it's love. That true love doesn't need an explanation. Your grandmother is a very wise woman," Sarah agreed. "And of all possible explanations, that might just be the most beautiful." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Ethan couldn't sleep. He got up quietly and went to Brave's pen, which stood near the main house. The bull, as if waiting for him, immediately approached the fence. "Thank you, buddy," the boy whispered, stroking the animal's muzzle. "You saved my life, and not just mine. Look at all these happy people because of what you did." The bull snorted softly, rubbing his head against the boy's hand in a gesture of affection that any outsider would find astonishing for an animal of his size. Back in bed, Ethan fell asleep with a smile on his face, feeling safe and loved. In the next room, Michael also smiled, having discreetly watched the scene between his son and the bull through the window. The pain of losing his wife would never fully disappear, but now there was a new purpose, a new path forward. Hope Farm continued to grow in the following years. The project that began with one extraordinary bull expanded to include various animals, serving children and adults with different therapeutic needs. Researchers from universities came to document the remarkable results, especially in cases of children with developmental disorders and elderly patients with dementia. Brave, even as he aged, maintained his special nature until the end of his days, always displaying patience and gentleness that defied explanation for an animal of his size. His legacy, however, went far beyond his own existence. He had inspired a profound change not only in the life of Ethan and his family, but in an entire community. A simple sign at the farm's entrance perfectly captured the extraordinary story that had unfolded there. Hope Farm, where animals and humans heal each other. And what about Ethan? The boy who had nearly undergone unnecessary surgery grew up, determined to follow two seemingly different paths that, in his eyes, were complementary: medicine and veterinary science. Years later, he would indeed fulfill his dream, developing groundbreaking research on the connection between animal and human health, always remembering that his own journey had begun with an extraordinary bull that, in some inexplicable way, had known exactly what needed to be done. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just getting started. Now back to the story. The impact of Ethan and Brave's story wasn't confined to the small town of Pleasant Hill. Gradually, accounts of the extraordinary bond between the boy and his bull and the remarkable therapy program that had emerged from that event began spreading to other states. One summer morning, roughly 2 years after the hospital incident, Michael Anderson was surprised by the arrival of a van bearing the logo of a major national television network. A journalist and her crew had traveled specifically to document what they called the miracle of the bull. "Mr. Anderson," the reporter greeted, extending her hand. "I'm Amanda Carter from the National Network. We're here to do a special feature on the work you're doing here at Hope Farm." Michael, still uneasy about all the attention his property was receiving, politely led the crew on a tour of the facilities. Ethan, now 11, naturally took on the role of guide, enthusiastically explaining how each animal contributed to the therapy program. "And this is Brave," he proudly introduced when they reached the special pen where the imposing bull rested under the shade of a tree. He's the reason for all of this. The journalist, initially nervous at the animal's size, was visibly impressed by its gentleness when Ethan stepped into the pen. "It's amazing how calm he is around you," she exclaimed as the cameraman captured the moment. "Aren't you afraid?" Ethan laughed, hugging the bull's neck. "Afraid of Brave? Never. He's my best friend. Watch this." To the crew's astonishment, the boy demonstrated how the massive animal responded to simple commands, lying down when asked and allowing small children to approach safely. Dr. Sarah Miller, who had been invited for the interview, explained the scientific aspect of the program. "What we're observing here goes beyond simple animal-assisted therapy. We're documenting significant improvements in patients with various conditions, from anxiety disorders to post-traumatic recovery cases." The feature, aired nationally a few weeks later, brought unprecedented visibility to Hope Farm. Soon, letters and emails began pouring in from across the country, families seeking help, institutions interested in replicating the model, and even sponsorship offers from companies wanting to associate their brand with the project. Grandma Ruth, ever practical and down-to-earth, worried about the sudden fame. "We need to be careful, Michael," she warned over breakfast after yet another call from a TV show. "We can't let them turn our story into a circus." "You're right, Mom," he agreed thoughtfully. "What we started here is something serious, not a spectacle." It was Ethan who offered a surprisingly mature solution for a child his age. "Why don't we just invite a few of these people to come see our real work?" he suggested. "Not to film Brave doing tricks, but to see how we help the children who need it." The boy's idea led to the organization of Hope Farm's first Symposium on Animal-Assisted Therapy, a small but meaningful event that brought together researchers, doctors and specialists genuinely interested in their work. During the symposium, Grandma Ruth noticed an elderly woman quietly observing everything without joining the discussions. Approaching her, she introduced herself. "Good afternoon. I'm Ruth, Ethan's grandmother. Did you come to learn about our program?" The older woman smiled warmly. "My name is Dorothy. I came from Philadelphia just for this. You see, my grandson is on the autism spectrum. He's 10 years old and barely interacts with anyone. Do you think our program could help him?" Grandma Ruth asked, sitting beside her. Dorothy sighed, her eyes glistening. "When I saw the story about Ethan and Brave, something deeply moved me. Tommy, my grandson, has always been fascinated by large animals. They're the only things that seem to spark any reaction in him. That seemingly chance meeting would mark the beginning of another transformative story." The following week, Tommy arrived at the farm with his grandmother for his first therapy session. The boy, who rarely made eye contact and almost never spoke, spent his first visit just watching Brave from a distance, without any direct interaction. Ethan, showing sensitivity beyond his years, respected his new friend's pace. "He can just watch today," he explained to the therapy team. "Brave doesn't mind waiting." By the third visit, what Dorothy would later call the first miracle happened. Tommy spontaneously reached out to touch Brave's muzzle. Even more astonishing, he murmured his first word in months: "Big." This particular case caught Dr. Sarah Miller's attention, and she began meticulously documenting Tommy's progress. After 6 months of regular therapy at Hope Farm, the boy had significantly expanded his vocabulary and showed remarkable improvements in his social interactions. "It's as if Brave built a bridge between Tommy and the world," the doctor explained. During a meeting with other professionals involved in his care, Tommy's success paved the way for a specialized program for children on the autism spectrum, which soon became one of Hope Farm's most sought-after services. With growing demand, the small property had to adapt. New facilities were built, with donations and funding, including a covered therapy room for rainy days and accommodations for families traveling from afar. One particularly meaningful afternoon, as Tommy completed a year of therapy at the farm, Dorothy approached Michael Anderson with a proposal. "I want to do more than just bring my grandson here," she explained. "I have some savings and I'd like to contribute to expanding the program." Michael was surprised to learn that Dorothy was the widow of a successful businessman and had considerable means to support causes she believed in. "I'm not offering this out of charity," she clarified, sensing his initial discomfort. "It's an investment in the future of children like Tommy, and if I may say so, a way to honor the extraordinary bull who made all this possible." Dorothy's contribution led to the creation of the Brave Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to expanding access to animal therapy for families in need. The model developed at Hope Farm began to be replicated in other regions, always keeping as its central principle respect for both animals and patients. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to grow, not just physically, but in his understanding of the impact his story and his four-legged companion had on so many lives. Now in high school, he maintained exemplary grades in science and had already expressed interest in applying to veterinary school and later human medicine. "You know doing 2 degrees will be tough, right?" Michael asked when his son shared his ambitious plans. "Dad, after everything we've been through, tough has a whole new meaning for me," the teenager replied with a smile. "Besides, Dr. Sarah said there are research programs that combine both fields." The doctor, who had become a constant presence in the family's life, had become a mentor to Ethan, encouraging his scientific curiosity while equally valuing his natural intuition with animals. During a routine checkup for Brave, Ethan noticed the veterinarian, Dr. Kevin, seemed worried. "Is something wrong with him?" the young man asked, stroking the bull as the vet finished the exam. "Nothing serious, Ethan," the vet reassured him. "But we have to accept that Brave isn't young anymore. He'll need special care from now on." The news, though expected, hit Ethan as a reminder that even the most extraordinary stories have their limits. The bull, now at an advanced age for his species, was beginning to show signs of aging. "What can we do to keep him comfortable?" he asked, determined to provide the best for his friend. Dr. Kevin explained the necessary care. A special diet, gentler exercise, and medication to ease joint discomfort. Ethan absorbed every word, taking detailed notes and personally taking charge of the bull's new care routine. One starry night, sitting beside Brave in his special pen, Ethan reflected on everything they had been through together. The massive animal rested peacefully, his head in the young man's lap like a small pet, not a half-ton bull. "You know, Brave, I always wonder what went through your mind that day," he murmured, gazing at the stars. "How did you know? I needed you at the hospital. How did you find your way?" The bull responded with a soft snort, as he always did when Ethan talked to him. It was almost like a dialogue, a communication beyond words. "Whatever it was, you changed everything. Not just for me, but for so many people," the young man continued. "And I promise I'll keep going with what we started here, even when—" His voice faltered, unable to say the words that acknowledged his friend's mortality. The full moon illuminated the pen, casting soft shadows over the bull's glossy coat. In that moment of intimacy between two such different friends, something of the original mystery that had brought them together seemed to linger in the air. That inexplicable connection that had saved a life and, in turn, transformed so many others. In the main house, Michael watched the scene from the window, feeling both pride and melancholy. His son had faced more challenges in his few years than many adults ever would. He had lost his mother young, nearly died from a misdiagnosis, and was now preparing for the inevitable goodbye to his most faithful companion. "He'll be okay," Michael thought. "Emily would be so proud of the man he's becoming." Grandma Ruth, making tea in the kitchen, seemed to read her son-in-law's thoughts. "He has her strength, doesn't he?" she remarked, placing a steaming cup in front of Michael. that same determination, that same big heart. Michael nodded, words caught in his throat by emotion. Even after all these years, Emily's absence was still a constant presence, especially in moments like this. She always said that calf had something special, Grandma Ruth continued, sitting at the table. Remember how she insisted we give it to Ethan, even when we thought it was too big an animal for a child? The man smiled at the memory. How could I forget? She gave me a half-hour lecture about how I was underestimating our son, and as always, she was right, the older woman added with a wistful sigh. Emily always saw beyond the surface. As the family reminisced in the small town of Pleasant Hill, the story of Ethan and Brave continued to inspire change. Mercy. General Hospital, now under new leadership, had implemented strict diagnostic verification protocols and mandatory second opinions. The local school developed a special curriculum on animal welfare and its connection to human health. And at City Hall, a bill proposed creating an animal-assisted therapy day in recognition of Hope Farm's pioneering work. The community that had once nearly lost one of its young people to a medical error had now become a model for integrative care and compassionate healthcare. Visitors from other towns and states came to learn about the model born from the extraordinary bond between a boy and his bull. On a sunny Sunday, Hope Farm opened its gates for a special celebration, the 5th anniversary of its animal therapy program. Children who had benefited from the treatment, their families, healthcare professionals, and community members gathered for a simple yet meaningful party. During the event, Ethan was invited to say a few words. The teenager, now 14, stepped timidly onto the makeshift stage. "I'm not great with speeches," he began, echoing the words his father often used in similar situations. "But I wanted to thank everyone who helped turn what could have been a tragedy into something so beautiful." He paused, searching for the right words. "They say everything happens for a reason, but I think what matters isn't the reason. It's what we do afterward. When I almost lost my life because of a misdiagnosis, Brave did something unexplainable to protect me. And instead of just being grateful and moving on, we decided to use that experience to help others." A respectful silence fell over the audience, many with tears in their eyes as they remembered the family's extraordinary journey. Today, I see kids who couldn't speak before now expressing their feelings. I see adults who've suffered trauma finding peace again. And I see a community that came together to support something bigger than all of us. Ethan continued, his voice growing steadier. "That taught me our response to suffering is what really matters. We can just survive it, or we can turn it into something that helps others." His eyes found Brave watching from his nearby pen. "And all of this thanks to a stubborn bull who refused to stay on the farm when he sensed I needed him." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd, easing the emotional weight of the moment. Brave, as if understanding he was being talked about, let out a loud snort, drawing even more laughter. The celebration continued with performances by children in the program, heartfelt testimonials from families, and a simple yet meaningful tribute to the bull who had inspired it all. A commemorative plaque to be placed at the farm's entrance, inscribed with the words, "Where love finds paths reason cannot know." As the afternoon wore on, Ethan found a moment to sit alone with Dr. Sarah, who watched him with evident pride. "You know universities will be fighting over you in a few years, right?" she remarked. "Not many young people have your practical experience and intuitive understanding in this field." The teenager smiled, slightly embarrassed by the praise. "I still have a lot to learn, but I know what I want to do with my life. I want to understand this connection between humans and animals, not just scientifically, but also—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "With my heart." "That's exactly the balance that makes you special, Ethan," the doctor replied. "The ability to combine technical knowledge with empathetic sensitivity is rare and valuable." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the guests started saying their goodbyes. The Anderson family, exhausted but deeply satisfied, gathered on the porch to watch the end of that special day. Grandma Ruth, Michael, and Ethan stood in thoughtful silence for a few moments until the young man broke it. "Do you think Mom would be proud of what we've built here?" Grandma Ruth took her grandson's hand in hers, weathered by time. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it, my dear. Your mother would be overjoyed. This place has so much of her, that ability to see beauty where others only see hardship. Michael, gazing at the horizon where sky and earth seemed to merge, added, "And she would have loved seeing you give that speech today. She always said you had a gift for touching people's hearts, even when you were just a baby." The future stretched before young Ethan and Hope Farm like a field of possibilities. The project, born from a moment of crisis, had become a beacon of hope for many, proving that sometimes the most unexpected paths can lead to extraordinary destinations. And Brave, the unlikely four-legged hero, continued his journey beside the boy he had protected, now playing an even greater role, teaching many that the connection between living beings goes beyond rational explanations and reveals itself in the most surprising ways when love is present. Years passed. Ethan, now 18, prepared to leave Pleasant Hill for the first time. After excelling in high school, especially in the sciences, he had been accepted into State University to study veterinary medicine, the first step in his long-term plan to combine knowledge of animal and human health. The night before his departure, for the city he spent hours in Brave's special pen. The bull, now elderly and slower but still majestic, stood by the young man's side as he always had. "I'll miss you every day, buddy," Ethan murmured, stroking the animal's fur. "But I'll be back every holiday and break, I promise." Brave, as if understanding, gently rested his head on the boy's shoulder, a gesture he always made during the most important moments. Inside the house, Michael packed the last of the travel bags, trying to hide his emotions about his son leaving. Grandma Ruth, now over 75 but still full of energy, prepared snacks for the journey. "I packed enough cookies to feed the entire dorm," she teased when Ethan finally came inside. "And don't forget to share. Making friends is important." "Grandma, I'm going to study, not on a picnic," the young man laughed, hugging her warmly. "But thank you. I'll miss your cheese puffs." That evening, the family gathered for a special dinner. Jessica, the teacher who had followed Ethan's entire school journey, was there, along with Dr. Sarah and a few close friends. "A toast to our future doctor," proposed Michael, raising his glass. "May you take everything you've learned here out into the world." Ethan blushed slightly, still uncomfortable with praise. "There's still a long way to go before I'm a doctor, Dad. Years of study ahead, and we'll be here cheering for you every step of the way," added Grandma Ruth, "and taking good care of Brave until you come back." At the mention of the bull's name, a brief silence fell over the table. Everyone there knew that the animal, though well cared for, was already advanced in age for his kind. The possibility that Ethan might not find his old friend waiting when he returned from break was something no one wanted to mention, but it hung like a shadow over the moment's happiness. It was Sarah who broke the silence with her usual sensitivity. "You know, Ethan, what you and Brave have built together goes far beyond physical presence. The legacy you've left in the lives of so many children and families will last for generations." The young man nodded, grateful for how she approached the difficult subject. "I've been thinking about studying specifically how animals perceive physiological changes in humans," he commented. "There's research showing dogs can detect epileptic seizures before they happen, or even certain types of cancer. I want to understand if there's something similar that explains how Brave knew I was in danger." "A perfect combination of your two interests," observed Jessica. "Rigorous science and that special connection that's always been your natural gift." As the evening wore on and the guests said their goodbyes, Ethan found a moment for one last private conversation with Sarah, who had become his mentor and professional inspiration. "Doctor, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for me and our family," he said. "If it weren't for you that day at the hospital, I just did my job, Ethan," she replied with a smile. "It was you and your family who turned a traumatic experience into something so beautiful and meaningful." She handed the young man a small package. "A gift for your academic journey. Open it when you're at the university." The next morning, the farewell was emotional. Michael would drive his son to the capital, where he'd settle him into the university dorm before returning to Pleasant Hill. Grandma Ruth, trying to keep her composure, repeatedly adjusted her grandson's shirt collar. "Don't forget to eat properly, you hear?" None of that processed food full of chemicals. I'll try, Grandma, he promised, hugging her tightly. Before getting into the car, Ethan made sure to say goodbye to Brave. The bull, as if sensing the importance of the moment, stood especially, still and attentive. "Take care of them for me, buddy," the young man whispered into the animal's ear. "I'll be back soon to see you." During the trip, father and son talked about the future, plans and dreams. Michael, who had always worked the land and never had the chance to study beyond basic schooling, couldn't hide his pride in his son, who would be the first in the family to attend university. "Your grandfather would have been so happy to see this day," he remarked as the city skyline came into view. "He always said education was the only inheritance no one could take from you." When they arrived on campus, Ethan felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. The environment was so different from quiet Pleasant Hill. Students from all over the Chi country hurried past, carrying books and chatting eagerly about subjects still new to him. After helping his son settle into the dorm and meeting his roommate, Brian, a young man from Chicago, who would also study veterinary medicine, it was time to say goodbye. "Son," Michael began, but the words failed him. Instead, he hugged Ethan tightly. "I'll be fine, Dad," the young man assured him. "And I'll make you proud." "We already are, Ethan. More than you could imagine." After his father's departure, now alone in his new surroundings, Ethan finally opened Sarah's gift. It was a high-quality stethoscope, accompanied by a simple card. "To listen with science what your heart already knows. Your journey is just beginning." That night, on his first day away from home, the young man gazed at the stars through the dormitory window, reflecting on the extraordinary series of events that had led him there. From a misdiagnosis that nearly cost him his life to the inexplicable intervention of a bull that changed so many destinies. "Thank you, Brave," he thought, feeling a surprising peace despite being far from everything familiar. "I promise to honor what I learned from you." In the small town of Pleasant Hill, under the same starry sky, an elderly bull rested peacefully in his pen, as if also contemplating the start of a new journey for his young human friend. The bond between them transcended physical distance, standing as a living testament that some connections simply defy conventional logic and are no less real or powerful for it. Hope Farm would continue its transformative work, now under the direct supervision of Michael Anderson and Grandma Ruth, with the steady support of Dr. Sarah Miller. And in a few years, when Ethan returned with knowledge expanded by science but his heart still guided by the same sensitivity that had always defined him, new frontiers would be explored in that project, born from the love between a boy and his extraordinary bull. The end of the story. Dear listener, did this story touch your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments. Brave shows us that true love finds inexplicable ways to protect those we cherish. Leave a like and subscribe for more soul-stirring stories.